This recording was produced by Oregon Trail Baptist Church. If you'd like to get more recordings, or to leave your feedback, please visit us at www.otbchurch.com or write us at P.O. Box 298, Guernsey, Wyoming 82214. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope that today's recording will not just challenge your thinking, but will transform your life.
So we're going to move to a very, very practical topic, and sleep. Now, no, we're not all going to take a nap. All right, so this is lesson 19, sleep, a gift from God. Let's run a little bit of this sleep through our common filter here. What's common seems to be normal, and what is normal seems to be right, okay? So as we kind of start off this idea of sleep, we sleep about a third of our lives. Do you realize that? About a third of our lives are spent in a subconscious state called sleep, where we're resting. And the Bible mentions sleep approximately 150 times. Now, let's just pull out our Bible trivia. Where does the Bible talk about sleep? Okay, so there's actually a spiritual sense of being sleepy and not attentive to spiritual things. What'd you say?
Proverbs.
Okay, what about Proverbs?
A little sleep, a little slumber.
A little folding of the hands to sleep. Talking about the lazy person and how they...
I think in the Gospels.
Okay, and what in the Gospels?
Jesus talks about sleep.
He does?
I'm saying eloquent, but I'm not so eloquent.
It's okay, we all do it at times. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, the disciples falling asleep when they should have been praying. So, you got it. Jesus was asleep in the bottom of the boat.
Oh, yeah.
Jonah was asleep in a boat. Although actually the Hebrew there, he might not have been asleep. He might have been just laying down. But he might have been asleep. He might have been just resting.
He was resting. Yeah.
Either way, he was in the bottom of the boat. Genesis, where's the first time you think sleep comes up in the Bible? Yeah. God puts Adam to sleep with the rib. Is there anyone else God put to sleep to do something? Abraham. Okay, when did Abraham get put to sleep? Okay, when God's going to make a covenant, God forces it as a one-sided covenant by putting Abraham to sleep so they couldn't walk through the animals together. Did you have another one?
Was it Noah's message to Noah to build the ark? Didn't that come?
You know, I don't know. I'd have to look at that. But whether that one is or not, there are times in Scripture where a message from God comes through a dream or whatever in someone's sleep. Okay, Joseph and Mary, yeah. So, I can't remember on the Noah one.
Wasn't it Samson's parents? Didn't they get a message?
They got a message. I don't think that one was through sleep. Especially since the parents were arguing over... Samson's dad says, we're going to die because we saw God. And his wife says, no, we're not. Are you that dumb? Really, if God gives us a message, he's not going to give us a message and then kill us, all right? So anyway, there's some really humorous stuff in the Bible if you just stop and pay attention. So anyway, it's mentioned quite a bit. And through the course of looking at it, we will look at a bunch of these. Sleep in our society. Well, some people sleep too much, and some people sleep too little. I am amazed at people who don't have a job, but they're always tired, and they can sleep till who knows when in the day. But I'm looking for work. It's like, well, you don't get out there to do anything till later. And I guess if you don't have work, you might as well sleep in. But there's a constant problem, it seems, in society of getting people to work on time because they sleep in when they're not supposed to be. Or for some of us, we sleep too little. In college, I definitely began my college years sleeping too little. We had a curfew. We had to be in bed by 11. Once a week, we could stay up to midnight. We had to get up by 6:30, but we couldn't get up any sooner than 5:30. However, we could get up once a week at 5. Now, you couldn't do those back to back. You couldn't go to bed at midnight and get up at 5. But so I would live on that routine of every week I'd go to bed at 11, or every night I'd go to bed at 11. Every morning I was up at 5:30, and then every week I took advantage of my midnight and my 5 o'clock, that extra. And you know what I did? I got really tired really fast. It was hard to stay awake in class. I was getting not enough sleep, and by my senior year, I'd go to bed at 9 and say, wake me up for devotions at 10 or whatever, and they might wake me up, they might not. But there's some people who it's easy to get watching a movie or something and just kind of stay up later than you should, and then you end up sleeping in later than you should, or you don't sleep in, and then all day you're kind of dragging, And some can't stop to sleep. We get so busy with things we don't bother stopping to sleep. And some can't get to sleep. I looked up the list I found this quite interesting. Wikipedia, your online encyclopedia, had this list a mile long of sleep disorders, and it said common sleep disorders. And I remember reading one of the disorders and said, this is a rare disorder. And I'm like, it's under the common section. It's a common rare disorder. Anyway, there's restless leg syndrome, there's sleep apnea, there is, you name it, there's sleeping disorders. Even sleepwalking is considered a disorder. How many of you have ever done that you know of? How many of you know somebody with a sleeping disorder? They seem to be all more common, don't they? My wife is going to begin to have a sleeping disorder because I snore so loudly. I had roommates concerned that he's like, there's 4 stages of sleep, and I don't know what they all are, but you're supposed to gradually go in and out of these things. He's like, you drop from stage 1 to stage 4. He's like, you're just out. I'm like, okay, is that a problem? I feel like I sleep well. I did have a roommate, though, who didn't, I don't know what, his was a breathing disorder. So it wasn't just snoring, but at night he would gasp for air. Is it? Okay. And it sounded like the poor guy was dying. And, and it'd been this way for years. So they did surgery to clear out his passages, and it didn't help. And I think because he didn't get the sleep he needed at night, he really struggled in school. He really struggled. He was a good student. He studied hard, but he just struggled getting concepts. I think part of it was he just wasn't getting the sleep he needed. Not his fault or anything. Here's a poem about sleep that I thought was fitting. Not to bed, not to sleep, not just yet. Duty can write a final drop, duty can wring a final drop of adrenaline from the body's stores. So much to do in 40 final ticks of frenzy. One note to write, one essay to scan, one thought to scribe before I can measure the day and sigh it to a close. The body begs to sleep, but the mind, that traitor, awakens as it reclines, enlisting as its startled ally emotion, which demands to know why he did this and she did that. Dashed hopes and old jealousies drip from the ear and soil the pillow. Defenses fall, insurrections rise, and the king stumbles. Not to rest, not to sleep, not just yet. One more line to scan, one more thought to scribe, one more nightmare to still before I can measure the day and sigh it, cry it, meditate it, medicate it to a close. Now, does that not speak a lot about sleep in our society? Several people, to get to sleep anymore, they have to take a pill to get to sleep, or pop a pill to wake up from sleep. I'm assuming they actually wake up somewhat, but then they pop the pill to, I don't know, it's like drinking a cup of coffee. You get up and then you're not really up till you have that cup of coffee. What different perspectives concerning sleep have you encountered? I mean, you've talked to people, I'm sure.
College is where you can sleep when you're dead.
You can sleep when you're dead? How does that work?
You don't need sleep through college.
Oh. I don't know about you. I've observed several, even in my own life, after college, where I had a very rigorous and bad sleep routine. I mean, it was a consistent routine, but it wasn't enough. I think it did long-term damage. Mm-hmm. Personally, I just, it's like, and I know we get older, it seems like a high school kid can stay up all night and go all day and not skip a beat. And we get older and we just can't do that. When do you usually talk to people about your sleep? Well, obviously when you're not asleep. Well, some of us sleep talk. Well, okay, when we're late for work, usually when we're lacking and we're tired, I guess sometimes we say, I got a great night's sleep, or the phrase, I slept like a log or a baby or whatever. But we don't generally talk too much about our sleep, unless we have a sleeping disorder. Then we got the CPAP machines that help you breathe.
We talk about the differences of why this person or that person can or can't go to sleep.
Yeah. My wife,
Speaks for
in the realm of the poem, when it talks about the mind that traitor, my wife is resonating with that. I can go to sleep.
5 minutes.
I can know I have tons to do tomorrow, but in general, give me 5 minutes, I'm out. My wife, it might take you half an hour, at least, to just get her mind to wind down and to stop to where she can rest. With me, it's just like, okay, I'm gone. Goodbye. This is kind of our societal view of sleep, and even as believers, we have sleep problems, or we enjoy sleep, that's for sure. But this lesson centers on sleep as a gift. Spurgeon actually preached on sleep in one of his sermons, and here's an excerpt from it. He said, "We think that we lay our heads upon our pillow and compose our bodies in a peaceful posture, and that, therefore, we naturally and necessarily sleep. But it is not so. Sleep is the gift of God. And not a man would close his eyes, did not God put his fingers on his eyelids. Did not the Almighty send a soft and balmy influence over his frame, which lulled his thoughts into quiescence, making him enter that blissful state of rest, which we call sleep." I can't read today. Go ahead and turn your Bibles to Psalm 127. God designed our bodies to need sleep. So from a secular perspective, they're going to approach it from the scientifical side of you are a organism, you are a life form, you've been designed with a life cycle, and part of that cycle is you need sleep, just like an animal, just like various things in nature need rest. So sleep is just something natural. It's the way we're wired. It's what our body needs. It's during our sleep that our muscles and body gets rebuilt. It's actually, our body can be resting, okay, so like laying on the couch, and our muscles and stuff can be recuperating. We're going to do the whole chapter, Leroy. But our mind only gets its little bit of a mental break, they tell us, in sleep. The mind actually slows down its processes. It doesn't stop completely, but it gets its rest in sleep. And so from a scientific point of view, they're like, hey, this is what it is. But God gives sleep, and God can withhold sleep. So here we are. Oops, mine didn't pull up. Sorry. Psalm 100. Everybody beat me there. That's not a number. 127. All right, this is written by Solomon. It says, "Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman walketh in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows. For so he giveth his beloved sleep. Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gates." How does our society approach sleep? I think I kind of already talked about that with a scientific perspective. Do we perceive as a society, perceive sleep as verse, 4 here said, or 2, as a gift from God? We don't tend to think of sleep, even as believers, as a gift from God. We tend to think of it as part of life. Now, what's the difference between thinking of sleep as a gift from God and thinking of sleep as just part of life? Okay, our attitude towards it. And how will that change our attitude? Isn't it easy to take sleep for granted?
I've got to do this or I can't go do that tomorrow.
Okay, so I have to get to sleep or I can't do this tomorrow. We recognize it almost as a fuel. I got to fill up my tank. I know for me personally, if I go too long without enough sleep, my body will start to give me a headache, and I'll recognize I can take ibuprofen or Tylenol or Advil or whatever. None of those are going to work. I might try to drink some more water. None of that's going to work. I just need to go sleep, and I wake up from that nap refreshed, feel better, and then if I've slept too long, what then happens? You can't sleep at night, right? My wife says she doesn't have that problem. Blind people actually have a disorder most blind people, a sleeping disorder, and I can't remember what they call it, but it has to do with the fact that our bodies set some of their sleep cycle off of light. And if you're blind, you don't have that normal 24-hour cycle because everything's always dark to you. You don't perceive the light. So blind people can sometimes struggle to stay awake in the day and to go to bed at night just because everything to them is dark. I did not realize that till I started reading on sleep. If sleep is a gift from God, do you think that lack of sleep may be a curse of God? I kind of left this open-ended because this one could bring in some interesting discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
Too much sleep,
Okay.
you get tired.
All right. Would lack of sleep or not being able to sleep be a curse from God or a punishment? Okay, and what would make that? You said it depends, so what would?
If you're fighting with God and resisting what He wants you to do, then yeah, it probably is a curse. That no, you're not going to sleep until your sin's dealt with.
Yeah.
Guilty conscience.
Okay, so sin or a guilty conscience or a resisting to God, it's probably a curse where God's not letting you sleep. But when would it maybe not be a curse?
When you're in fellowship,
Okay.
You've had too much coffee.
Okay. The curse of coffee. But,
well, just in Bible study, you get so deep into reading your Bible that, it's 5 in the morning already, I might as well stay up.
yeah, that doesn't happen for most of us that often. However, I'm just being honest. When we lived here at the church, I couldn't sleep one night. Just couldn't sleep. So I got up out of bed and I came in the auditorium and I'm like, I'm wide awake. I can't sleep. I'm going to put the time to good use. Now, I don't think God was cursing me, so I began to study and prepare and do things that I needed to do. And it was during that time I began to watch the lights in here go, kind of off and on. I'm like, that's really strange. And it was not too long after that we found out that the wires on the back were arcing against each other and about burnt the church down. Now, okay, so I couldn't sleep, and I think part of that was God trying to say, hey, there's something wrong with your electrical system, and I wouldn't maybe have noticed it in the daytime. King Ahasuerus, or Xerxes from Greek records, when he couldn't sleep in the book of Esther, what was God doing? Yeah, God was working on him. He was preparing him and Mordecai and Haman. And he says, well, go read me these old chronicles, these boring books. Read these to me so I can get to sleep. And in the course of that, what did God do?
Jewish history.
Yeah. Well, not Jewish history, but the history of his own court and what Mordecai had done to save his life. And then it plants in the king's mind a thought of doing a good thing for Mordecai. It plays into the book of Esther, and it all hinged off of God withholding sleep. So just because God is withholding sleep from us doesn't mean that it's a curse. In fact, God may be waking you up to pray for somebody or to do something, such as I woke up and said, hey, I might as well study. He may be doing that, and it's not a curse. But it can be. It can be, but not always, Leroy. Yeah.
I think also, and I'll phrase this as it's not always a curse, it's not always a blessing.
Right?
But in situations where people go into a coma, that they might have not done anything wrong, God's using it to work on someone else's life. But the reverse is they're living a wicked life. Maybe you'll wake up and change your mind.
Yeah, it might get you to start thinking about things of a spiritual nature. It might start getting you to think about the Lord. True. So I think, in answer to the question I put on here, I think it can be a curse from God. And there's several. Sleep is one of those things that, as a gift of God, it's a good thing. But as we started off this session looking at what we could remember of sleep in Scripture, we had several negative influences of sleep. Sleeping when you're not supposed to. Sleeping, spiritually sleeping and not paying attention to things. And so sleep can actually be a negative. It can be a curse. It can be portrayed as a bad thing, but it's when we do it at the wrong time or for the wrong reason. Moving on with sleep as a gift, receive the gift of sleep. Now, this might sound weird, but when God gives a gift, we actually have to receive it, right? When we give our children gifts around Christmas time or for their birthday, they have to open it up and receive it and open the package and play with it. Don't play with sleep. I don't know how you do with that, but the point is you have to go ahead and enjoy it. Again, before we're done, we'll talk about the sluggard and extra sleep in more detail. But as a child of God, we can sleep and we can rest because God is watching over us. Now, can you think of any instances where people got in trouble during sleep? Or things went wrong during their sleep? Okay, Peter. Jonah, what about Jonah? I don't think that's why he ended up at the fish. I think that's a little bit of adding to there. How about, you may not remember, I think the guy's name was Jabal. He was the Syrian king, and he sleeps in the tent of this woman, and she takes a nail and drives it through his head while he's asleep. Abner, okay? When he should have been protecting Saul, he was asleep, and Saul could have lost his life. That is actually a great picture because Saul, who is he depending on for his protection? Abner. Abner's supposed to stay awake and watch over him, and he doesn't. David talks about resting in the Lord and laying down to sleep because guess what? God is watching over him. Now, King Solomon had all sorts of bodyguards, David's son. But David slept out in caves and in dens and in the field with nothing but God to watch over him, and he could sleep at peace. And yet Saul had someone watching over him, and, well, if it wasn't for David being an honest and godly person, he would have been dead. So we can enjoy, we can rest in our sleep because we know God is in control. He's working all things together for good. Yeah.
That takes me to Christ sleeping on the ship in the middle of the storm. Why are you worried? I'm with you.
Yeah. So Christ can sleep through the storm because God's in control. He's got everything. His Father was in control. Notice what verse 2 said of the psalm. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. What is that verse saying?
You're not getting enough sleep.
Okay, they're not getting enough sleep, but Leroy, why are they not getting enough sleep here?
Because they're worried about everything they
Yeah.
Okay? I think the best way to picture it is they've got a big project, a big task going on. They get up early, and they work at this, and they go to bed late. They work hard at this task. Now, there's times where it is appropriate to do that. The Bible talks about, what's that?
emergency situations.
Okay, emergency situations, when they go into a surgery and the surgery takes them 10 hours, that happens, and then you don't really want, okay, change over a surgeon's here. That doesn't work. But in the harvest time, it talks about the curse of sleeping during harvest. Okay, that is a time when you're busting your tail to get everything in and everything done.
Counting season.
Yeah, exactly. It's a season where you lack sleep. But I think he's talking about a lifestyle where you are living this way. This person, he's rising up early. He's depending really on his own ability to get the job done. And the last phrase is talking about this as vain because for so he, which is God, giveth his beloved sleep. Now the meaning of that phrase, giveth his beloved sleep, is actually hard to tell what it's supposed to exactly mean. You say, well, it sounds simple in English. Pick up 2 or 3 different translations of the Bible and you'll get 2 or 3 different renderings of this. It either means he gives you the ability to sleep, which is quite possible, or it means that while you're asleep, he's the one going to work for you. The reality is, either way, whatever the Hebrew is trying to say, God is the one working things out for you. Isn't it funny when we lay down our hands, when we go to sleep, when we rest, how sometimes by morning things are falling together in a way that we never thought they would? In fact, things will start to happen, like instead of us calling this person to hound them about paying the bill or to get the part or whatever, they call us to tell us what's going on. And instead of this being a hard process that we anticipated, this part of the project being quite difficult and complicated, things just fall into place quickly. See, God goes to work for us even in our sleep.
A lot of times you've had a night to ponder it. You've had some time to step back in the situation and sleep on it, as you say.
Our minds do funny things in sleep. I can remember I loved to play with Legos as a kid. And over the world when all you're worried about is your Legos fitting together right, all right? It's that is just monumental to a 10-year-old, but to an adult, that means nothing. But I would try to conceive in my mind a way to do things, and I was, the Legos have the parts and the gears and everything else. And I couldn't get something to work, and I would go to bed and I would sleep on it. And somehow through those processes of the mind, I would wake up in the morning and know what to do. Now, I guess my grandfather was the same way. He was an architect, or great-grandfather, I don't remember. But God does that as well. When we go to sleep, as a college student, I'd go to sleep. All that stuff I crammed for the night before got shuffled all night through my brain. But there was times when I'd sit down at a test and I'd remember things and I would go, how did I remember that? There were times I could write out details of what the professor said, and I'm like, how did I remember that? There was even one exam where I took it was dispensational theology. I had 2 hours to take the test, and I finished the essays, or the multiple choice question, in the first half an hour. And I looked at the clock and looked at the essays and said to the guy next to me, hey, can you wake me up in 20 minutes? I went to sleep. Why? I knew it was a quiet room. I could sleep. So I did, and I took a nap, finished the test, and I still was one of the first ones done. Didn't say I got a good grade, but I was done. But when we go to sleep, it's not always just God's working out things in our mind, but God's working out things with other people, with things that are outside of our control. He works He's watching out for His people, and we are, as it says in the verse, His beloved. He gives us sleep. So while the wicked may have to labor endlessly to get their job done, as God's people, we labor for the Lord, but we can stop and rest and sleep. Because at the end of the day, it's not our effort that gets the job done. We recognize it's the Lord and His working. Comments, questions before we jump to the last section here?
Does God need sleep while we're sleeping?
Does God need sleep? No, He doesn't. Although, I don't know if we'll get into this, there are some psalms that refer to God as sleeping. Did you know that? It says, arise, awake, O God, out of thy slumber, out of thy sleep. Did you know that? And yet, at the same time, there's psalms that said He's the one that never sleeps or slumbers. Anyway, we might deal with that later. Sleep as trust. When we sleep, we can release our hands from the task at hand. God may bless us or bless our task while we sleep, and God may bring it to naught when we sleep. You know, there's times when we're working on something, when we're going a direction, and we rest and we sleep, and by morning, God says, what you were doing, you're going the wrong direction here. Not necessarily sinful, not necessarily wrong, but what your plans are not matching His plans. And if you're resting in Him, you should be content with, okay, so what are your plans, Lord? This, what I thought had all laid out and prepared, didn't work out. So what do you have? And sometimes just leaving it with the Lord, letting Him guide and direct. I wrote here, do the duty that lies before you, then rest. Let the Lord take over. It is in vain is anxious toil by those who believe it all depends on them. Psalm 121 says, I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. So, as we close out this lesson, just to recap, sleep is a gift from God because we can simply rest and trust in Him. Trust Him that He is working when we're not. Trust Him that He gives us the rest we need. And trust Him that if we're going the wrong direction, if we're pursuing something that's not His will, He's going to stop it. He's going to stand in the way. He's going to, even as we sleep, maybe give us an uneasy feeling about it and just a check in our spirit, like, no, this is not the direction. But it is a gift from God meant for us to enjoy. And although there's excesses of too much or too little, let's as believers enjoy this gift of sleep. Comments, questions as we close out today? All right, well, let's have a word of prayer. Father, we thank you that you have designed us in such a way to need sleep. And Lord, although during our time of sleep we are in many senses the most vulnerable because we are unaware of our surroundings, we're thankful that we can securely rest in you. We're thankful that you give us sleep and sweet sleep as we need it. Lord, would you help us to have a biblical view of sleep? And Lord, when you withhold sleep from us, would you even use that withholding to prompt us to pray or to dig into your word or to seek your face into why the sleep is withheld. Lord, would we recognize sleep as a gift from you? We ask this in your Son's name. Amen.